Hey guys, and welcome back to another KDP income report for November 2025. In this video, I'm going to be sharing my income from selling low and medium content books and primarily low content books. And I'm also going to be sharing my ad spend, how much I made on different marketplaces, and compare how this Q4 is going in comparison to previous years. So if you're interested in any of that, please do stick around, and also stay with me to the end of this video where I talk about another side hustle that I've been concentrating a little bit more on recently. So let me know how Q4 is going for you so far. If you've watched any of my recent videos, you will know that I have had a big dip in my royalties this year. And in my last video, I also talked about how Amazon USA and the UK are showing low content books less than they were before for many keywords, and that my biggest dip in royalties has been by far from Amazon UK. Part of that is also because they added 20% VAT on top of the listing price, and so my royalties went down considerably, and also because I didn't feel I could raise my prices to $7.99 in the UK because it would take my book over £9, and some of those just it wasn't feasible. And I didn't change a lot of them to $9.99 in the US either, but I'll talk about that a little bit later on. I know that for some people, they often expect to make double what they make in November in December. For me, that hasn't been historically the case, and I'll show you that in a moment. So one surprise is that I did manage to publish a small amount of dated planners for the first time in years, really. I've always done the odd one, but I did a few this time, and one of them in particular started to sell. So it's only been about the 9th bestseller overall in November, but that's still quite decent considering it's a brand new book. And a couple of my others were in the top 20 sold as well. So I will certainly think about creating a lot more dated planners next year, even though I showed in my last video that low content books aren't really showing up for the broader term keywords when it comes to planners, but they are for the more niche down keywords, not in every case, but in certain niches. And I'm talking specifically about the US and the UK. Australia and Canada are showing them a lot more. So that is actually where some of my sales have been, in Canada and Australia, because the low content planners and things are just more visible than on the other platforms. So anyway, it will be interesting to see how these do in December, because the main one is also selling across multiple marketplaces at the moment. So in November, I made $5,106 and the highest day around $303. And then towards the end, there were lots of days around the $200 mark. But obviously, this is a lot lower than many previous years. For example, in 2024, I made $9,300. So it was a bit of a painful drop. But as you'll see in a moment, I did spend more on ads last year as well. However, this is pretty much what I expected. So just for comparison's sake, these are my December royalties over the years. And as you can see, the little November line next to December is often not massively higher, apart from in that one year in 2023. And I don't know, that was just a crazy year. It was totally an unexpected situation where everything seemed to sell much more than usual, including a new book that I had recently published. I think I'd published it in something like September or October, and that one took off, and I think that made something like $2,500 on its own. So, and that book never actually stuck. It's just kind of did for that Q4, and then it hasn't since, even though it's got a lot of reviews now. So I really can't predict how this December is going to go. It really depends whether the algorithm is generous to certain books too, which can drastically change your results. For example, a couple of times I did have books added to gift bundles, which is where Amazon will bundle your book with other books, or it'll bundle it with different gifts and things like that. And if you're lucky enough to get bundled in one of these with a product that sells really well, it can make an absolutely huge difference. So the only reason I found out about this, by the way, is just through looking. So sometimes I'll see an unusual amount of sales for a particular book that I might not sell that much of usually. And then if I go and kind of research it, I've sometimes found that it is in one of these bundles. And that's happened a couple of times, but it is great when it happens. So now I'm just going to show you my ad spend. So this is a comparison of my ad spend in 2024 and 2025. This year I spent $1,028, and last year I spent $1,543. So just over $500 more on ads last year, but obviously I made considerably more in profit as well. Although it's worth mentioning that the ad spend was shown via Publisher Champ, and on the actual ad platform on Amazon, it's showing that I spent $900. In any case, it's either 900 or 1,000. I'll have to double check on that. But the ACOS also was really good. It was 18.67%, and the cost per click on average was 21 cents, so not too bad. And these were my top 6 marketplaces in November, the UK being the leading one, followed by the US. But when I look at last year, the bulk of the change when it comes down to royalties is from the UK. So as you can see, a majority of my ad spend is still also in the UK, and not much at all this year in Canada or Australia. So in Australia and Canada, I actually made quite a similar amount this year in comparison to last year, and a lot of that is down to raising my prices, because I did raise my prices there to the $13.99 threshold in order to get the full royalty. So even though I'm making less sales, I'm making more per book. I have now turned on a lot more ads in Australia and Canada for December just to see how that goes. So last year I did make a majority of my sales in the UK, over $6,000 versus the $2,000 and something this year. So the difference on the other platforms is really more down to the royalty decrease, but in the UK, I'm earning a lot less per book due to having that 20% VAT now on every book. So that, as well as the overall decrease in royalties, has been a significant thing. Plus, then there's been a loss of ranking, and as I showed in my previous video, the UK is acting a lot more like the US now in terms of what they're showing for certain search terms. While I've just been researching on Amazon in general, I did notice that more publishers have seemed to raise their prices. So I think more people have slowly caught on to that. Definitely not everyone by any means, but I decided to raise a few of my prices anyway and monitor what impact it has on my sales. I think it was important to do that now in December because it's likely the month you're going to make the most sales of the year, and so it really makes sense to capitalize on that as much as you can. But I'll have to just monitor it closely and see what impact it has. But in some cases, it would mean making more than double the royalty I currently am per book. So it's a bit of a no-brainer really to at least try it. But let me know in the comments what impact raising your prices has had on your sales if you've done that. Or if you haven't done it, what are your reasons for not doing so? Let me know how December is going for you so far. Are you planning on sticking with KDP into 2026, or are you thinking of trying out something new? Which does bring me on to one other thing. I have mentioned various times over the years that I've wanted to make an effort with Amazon merch print on demand, but I've never really stuck with it. However, in recent months, I have been uploading again and I've started to see a glimmer of potential there, and I have started making sales too, so it's really encouraged me to try and be consistent. I'm not uploading daily there, but I am trying to stick to weekly uploads of at least something and see how that progresses. So I wrote a post on Substack about starting on there again and how much I made in November. So I'll link to that in the comments of this video and in the description. It's totally free to subscribe, and I'm going to be adding regular additional content on there over time. But that is all for today, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you're having an amazing December, and I will speak to you again very soon.